Hello Bookish friends, welcome to October wrap-up part 2. In this video, I will first of all talk about bookish statistics belonging to the whole month of October. And then in the second part, I will talk about the 8 books that I finished in the second half of October. And in the third part, I will briefly mention about the yearly reading challenges that I'm doing and the monthly readathons that I'm participating in. And as usual, in my last part, I will share my progress on my 3-month reading challenge, Berna's Bookish Bingo. In the month of October, I finished a total number of 13 works. I read 4 mystery, 2 romance, 2 horror, 1 science fiction, 1 general fiction, 1 historical fiction, 1 non-fiction, and 1 tragedy. I read a total number of 3,295 pages. I read 2 works less than 100 pages, 3 books between 100 and 200 pages, 3 books between 200 and 300 pages, 3 books between 300 and 400 pages, 1 book between 400 and 500 pages, and 1 book between 500 and 600 pages. My average page number per book amounted to 253.46 pages. As for publishing dates, I read 4 works published in 1800s, 2 works published in 1950s, 2 books published between the years 2000 and 2009, 2 books published between 2010 and 2014, 2 books published between 2015 and 2020, and 1 book published in 2021. I read 11 books originally written in English, 1 book originally written in Turkish, and 1 book originally written in Norwegian. I read the Norwegian work in its English copy. I read 7 novels, 2 graphic novels, 1 novella collection, 1 short story, 1 play, and 1 memoir. I read 12 books targeted towards adults and 1 book targeted towards young adults. I read 8 ebooks, 4 audiobooks, and 1 paperback. For my ratings, I gave 1 work 5 out of 10, 2 works 6 out of 10, 5 books 7 out of 10, 4 books 8 out of 10, and 1 book 9 out of 10. My average rating amounted to 7.16, which was a bit lower than my usual average rating. As I mentioned in the beginning of the video, I finished 8 works in the second half of October, so get ready for a lengthy wrap-up. The first work that I finished in the second half was my highest rated work of October, which was The Moonstone by Wilkie Collins. I read this book with Naomi at Naomi's bookshelf. In this classic mystery, a very valuable diamond is stolen. In the night it was gifted to Rachel there, and there is a rumor of a curse regarding this diamond. The story is told from the point of view of many people involved in the mystery. First of all, I have to say I loved the writing style of Wilkie Collins. He is a fantastic storyteller, and even though this book was also the longest work that I have read, I never felt like I was reading a very long book. The fact that I read it in smaller chunks helped it, but it does not happen with every long book that I read in chunks, I have to admit. I found the story very interesting, but I was much more interested in the characters of the people involved in this mystery. It was a more character-based mystery than plot-based mystery, and also I was very impressed by how Wilkie Collins showed the difference in their point of views in regarding to their character. It was great to read this book with Naomi. Even though I liked the book a bit more than her, it was great to know her views about the book. In summary, the only thing that bothered me was one point of view which I found a bit annoying. So I gave the book 9 out of 10. And then I finished the audiobook that I was listening for my lowest rated book in Goodreads. This book was among the top 10 lowest rated books in my TBR, The Upstairs Room by Kate Murray-Browne. It was also the book that I chose for Booktuber recommendation for October. It is the story of a couple who moved in a Victorian house. It's very suitable for Victober actually. And they also take a tenant to get money to renovate the house. But the wife gets sick when she is in the house and gets better when she is not around the house. So we follow the lives of mainly these 3 characters: the husband, the wife, and the tenant. We try to solve what is the matter with the house. First of all, I have to say I'm not very surprised that this book was the least rated book on Goodreads. Even though it's not the worst book that I have read, it was very frustrating to listen to this book because the book had so much potential. If it only focused on the mystery of the house, this book would have been very, very good. But because it also followed the romantic life of the tenant, the past relationships of the couple, and so many unnecessary things, I wanted to skip some chapters when I was listening to the book and get on with what was the matter with the Victorian house. Also, with the exception of the wife, the other 2 characters were quite two-dimensional. So in summary, I can say that if it focused on the house and the character of the wife more, this book could have been one of the highest rated books of this month, but unfortunately it is one of the lowest rated books, and I gave it 6 out of 10. And then I finished my third book for Victober, Cranford by Elizabeth Gaskell. I read this book with Margaret Pinard, and this was one of the books that I wanted to reevaluate in a video that I made about 2 months ago. Originally, when I read it 10 years ago, I gave this book 2 stars. And this book follows the anecdotes from the lives of the woman in Cranford in Victorian times. The society in Cranford is not rich, but they pretend that they are rich and they are noble. Anecdotes from their daily lives are told in this book. Margaret did a live show about this book, and I gave my detailed feelings about the book in that live show. I will link it in the cards as well as down below. But in summary, I can say that I really did like the book this time, and the fact that I read it in a more mature age and my expectations were much more different, made a very big difference in how I viewed the book. When I first read it, I was expecting a romance like I did with North and South, which is actually one of my favorite romances in Victorian literature. But this time I could see the subtle wit present in the anecdotes, and it also made me think about how societal norms are taught to us in our lives and the difference between Western and Eastern culture. So it was a very informative read for me, and our discussion was also great. Thank you, Margaret, for giving me a chance to be on your live show. I doubled up my rating and I gave Cranford 8 out of 10. After Cranford, I finished my Agatha Christie book of the month, Cat Among the Pigeons. And in this story, murders occur in a girls' school in 1950s. And in the third section of the book, Hercule Poirot comes and investigates the murders and many strange things happening in this school. I've heard conflicting things about this book. First of all, I cannot say it's not a typical Hercule Poirot book. It reads more like a standalone novel until Hercule Poirot appears. Was there a need for Hercule Poirot to appear in this book? I'm not really sure. On the other hand, I really liked the mystery in this book and how it connected with the international politics. And also, I really did like the headmaster of the school. She was a very strong woman, which impressed me. I gave the book a 7 out of 10. Next book that I finished was also an audiobook, a sequel book in Bridgerton series. It contained novellas which tells the stories of the couple after each book ended. First of all, Julia Quinn's writing style was on point in all of the stories. But about the plots, I felt very different about each of them. My favorite sequels belong to An Offer from Gentlemen and my favorite book, The Viscount Who Loved Me. The other ones were okay, but I really didn't like the sequel of Romancing Mr. Bridgerton. If you like the complete series like I do, and if you are a big fan of the Bridgerton series, I think it is a good book to read. It was also a 7 out of 10 for me. The next book that I finished was a graphic novel. Actually, the first in the series of Inca Negro. I read the second book without knowing it belonged to a series in the beginning of the month, and I quite liked that book. We follow a later timeline, but this book was written before. Like in the first book, Inca Negro, a journalist, colored man, but he passes as a white person and investigates mysteries in a covered identity. I also really did like this graphic novel written by Matt Johnson and illustrated by Warren Pleece. And I found the mystery to be intriguing again. Like the other book in the series, I also gave it an 8 out of 10. And then I finished an e-arc that was graciously given to me by Book Sirens in exchange for an honest review. The Hair of Dry Moat by Beth Fuller. In this book, our heroine is the nephew of the late owner of the Drymote. When her uncle dies, his brother comes to claim the house. Also his son, who's the Heir of Dry Moat, comes with him. And these two young people, first of all, form a friendship, and their relationship turns into something more. Also, there is a mystery involving a will in the later parts of the book, but it was mainly a historical romance book. As I mentioned before, I will give an honest review. I found this book to be a bit of a mixed bag. I quite liked some parts of the book in which our heroine talks about her fondness for the house, first scenes in which she interacted with the hero. And then when their relationship developed, I could not really understand what each of them wanted from each other. And the addition of the mystery of the will was too late in the story to actually care about what would happen. I really did like the antagonist in the book up until the very end, because he was a very complex character. But in the very end, his complexity disappeared and he just became pure evil. Because I really did like the writing style of the author, I gave the book 6 out of 10. The last book that I finished in the month of October was the book that I chose for my Cinder by Marissa Meyers. In this Cinderella retelling, Cinder is a mechanic who's a cyborg. Prince Kai, who's the heir to the throne, gives her an android to fix, and at the same time a very deadly plague threatens the country. And also there is a threat from the Lunars who can brainwash people with their abilities. When I first picked this book from the series, many of my friends who know my taste said that I would quite like this book, and that was exactly how I felt about the book. I quite liked the book. I do not care about young adult romance stories, and the romance story in this book was the least interesting thing for me. On the other hand, I really did like how Marissa Meyers created this sci-fi world which somehow fitted the fairy tale of Cinderella. Also, it was imaginative as well as interesting. I also really did like the relationships between cyborgs, androids, human beings, lunars. So it was an 8 out of 10 book for me. And I will certainly continue with the series. It was also great to know that my friends know me so well. In 2021, I'm doing 2 yearly reading challenges. One of them is participating in Read Christie 2021. For this challenge, I'm reading an Agatha Christie book every month, which would fit one of the prompts. For the first time, I picked a book just because I needed to find a book to fit the prompt, which was A Cat Among the Pigeons, which is a story set in a school. And I have only 2 prompts left to fill. And they are the easiest ones to fill because one is a story set before World War II and the other is a story set after World War II. So I am very certain that I will complete a Read Christie 2021 challenge. And another reading challenge that I'm doing is series about series. I'm very loosely joining this reading challenge. I plan to progress in 21 series and read 42 books belonging to a series. This month I reached both of my goals. I reached the goal of reading from 21 series last month, and this month I read more than 45 books belonging to a series in total. I read Bridgerton's Happily Ever Afters from Bridgerton series, and I finished this series. And I read both of the books from the Inca Negro duology. So I started and finished the series this month. And I started the Donor Chronicles series by reading the first book, Cinder. And I read 3 works for victober this month. The Body Snatchers, a short story from Robert Louis Stevenson. I read The Moonstone from Wilkie Collins and Cranford by Elizabeth Gaskell. I enjoyed all of them, and The Moonstone was my favorite book of the month. Lastly, I want to talk about how I did in my Fall Into Reading challenge. I read 4 books which would fit into prompts this month. For a person of color author, I read Inca Negro. Matt Johnson is a black author, but he passes as white, so it was also our own voices story. For non-fiction, I read İzmir Hikayeleri by Halit Ziya Uşaklıgil. This was a memoir of his time that he spent in Izmir in his youth. I read The Moonstone for a classic, and for a book published in 2021, I read The Hair of Dry Moat. I only have 2 squares left, so this challenge is going extremely well. I really do love this challenge, and I was actually inspired by this challenge for creating my Berna's Bookish Bingo. For my Bernard's Bookish bingo, I put all of the 8 works that I finished in the second half of October to a prompt. For a small town, I read Cranford, of course. I don't think I could find a book that would fit better for this prompt. For a career you wish you had, I read Cat Among Pigeons. I do not remember if I had mentioned it before. I wanted to become an English teacher when I first started my middle grade, and one of the characters in this book was an English teacher. For a character's name in the title, I read Cinder, no explanations necessary. For the free square, I put the Moonstone. For a general mystery, I read Inca Negro, a graphic mystery. This book did not contain any detectives, and that was my definition for this prompt, so this graphic novel suited the prompt. For the illustrated book, I read The Hair of Dry Moat. This was also in the list of 10 illustrated books in Goodreads in my TBR. For a feel-good book, Happily Ever Afters. The reason that I chose this book is in the title, of course. And lastly, for the lowest rated book, I read The Upstairs Room. As I mentioned before, this was also in the list of top lowest rated books in my Goodreads TBR. So this was my wrap of the books that I read in the second half of October. Please comment down below, have you read any of the books that I mentioned in this video? And if you're a new viewer, first of all, welcome. Please like and subscribe. Hope to see you very soon. Bye! For Turkish Word of the Day, since one of the books that I read was called Happily Ever Afters, I thought happy should be the word of the day. Happy means mutlu in Turkish, and mutlu is our Turkish word of the day. I hope you have a very mutlu day.